Let me add my welcome to Mark. It's great to see you here as we think about this question of how or where do we find success, and is finding true success really possible? Now, one of the questions that occupies a lot of cultures over history has been, what is the good life? What is a life that's virtuous, that's meaningful, that's kind of morally well lived? That's a huge question that a lot of cultures have explored. But one thing that's been noticed by a number of philosophers and sociologists is in late modern society, as you'd call us today, really, that question's not explored quite so much. Morality is either assumed or subsumed, but the question that's cropped up, that's a huge question for us today, is what is a successful life? Sometimes asked out loud, sometimes more just assumed, but lots of people around us are pursuing success. In her book, Success and Excess, Harriet Rubin is interviewing a number of different people and doing lots of different reflections on success. And she interviews a counsellor called Mary Bell, who counsels executives of large companies, FTSE 100 companies and things like this. And she has this reflection on the back of her lifetime of working with these type of people. She says, achievement is the alcohol of our time. Achievement is the alcohol of our time. In other words, it's achievement that people get addicted to, that they want more and more of, this sense of success. Now, let me just put this in context, because you might be thinking, well, look, sure, there are some people, in my office or in my walk of life who I know who are particularly driven by success, and they're a type of personality, they're competitive, they're kind of A-type personalities. That's not really necessarily me. Let me just reflect on that for a moment. I was at a StrengthsFinder work day a number of years ago for an organisation I was involved with. One of those things where they kind of do broad brushstroke psychometric tests, and then they let you know what your kind of main strengths are. And the whole thing about this day was that everyone's strength can also be a weakness, and you need to learn your particular matrix of strengths and things like that. So they'd been going around and finding out people's strengths like empathy and strategy and being a team worker and things like that. And then it came to me. And the person who was facilitating the session, in front of about 20 or 30 colleagues, says, it's Pete Nicholas. Would you just put your hand up? So I put my hand up. And she said, right, your number one strength is competitiveness. And there was this kind of nervous laughter around the room and like knowing looks. And whereas for everyone else, she managed to give a very balanced analysis of the pros and the cons of this particular virtue/vice, when it came to competitiveness, she seemed a little bit less even-handed. So she kind of said, so people who are competitive always have to win and are very driven by success. And then she looked at me and in front of 20 or 30 people said, is that the case with you? Do you always have to win? And I kind of looked a bit sheepish, and then she said, and I bet you're a bad loser too. So I'm now really on the spot, and I'm thinking, I need to get the heat off me a little bit. So then she said, is that the case? And I thought, I need to deflect a little bit. So I said, look, I don't know, because I never lose. But when I do, give me your number and I'll let you know. Now, this is not about people like me who are maybe overly competitive, who like to win their games. It's not about sports people. This is something that I would put it to you, all of our culture is looking for, success. Let me first of all ask, as we try to unpack this issue, why are we searching for success? Why are we searching for success? And one thing that I would suggest is that our searching for success is, if you like, a permanent need that we have as human beings to find purpose. Every human being will try to conceive of and locate purpose in a particular place. The great author Dostoevsky, writing in his famous book, Brothers Karamazov, wrote this: the mystery of human existence lies not just in staying alive, but in finding something to live for. Without a concrete idea of what we are living for, a man or a person would refuse to live. He's talking about the inescapable need for purpose. We've got to locate purpose somewhere in a particular relationship or in an activity. So purpose is something that's at the backdrop of this desire for success, because a lot of people locate a sense of purpose now in success, however they conceive it, maybe in a career, maybe in sporting achievements, maybe in the performing arts, maybe in how many Facebook followers they've got. There's a desire for purpose and finding purpose aligned with success. But secondly, there's been a shift in late modern society away from collective ways of thinking about success to a very individualistic mindset on success. And you see that actually in this parable, because the context for this parable is there in verse 13. And you might think this is a rather strange situation, but look down at verse 13. Jesus is in a crowd situation. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Now, to late modern ears, that's a bit of a strange thing, But actually, in a traditional society, that would be a hugely important issue. Now, we might just think that this is only a financial issue today. This is merely about making sure you get an even-handed distribution of the dead person's money. But that was not the issue then. You see, in traditional societies, purpose was located within the family, within the perpetuation of your family line, within the perpetuation of your name. And so this person's issue is really about whether he is going to carry on the family line and the family name, or whether his brother is going to do it, and how they're going to distribute that. Now, I wonder if you've ever read the Bible, if you've wondered why there's so many genealogies, that is, lists of who's in the family line. Well, basically, genealogies were the CVs of the day. Today, if you want to see someone's success, you say, show me your CV. Let's have a look at it, and then we can see how successful you are. But in the ancient world, it wasn't done through individual achievement. Success was located in the family. If you had a good family name and you perpetuated that family name, that was where you found a sense of purpose. Or in your nation state, or in your tribe. It was much more collective. But today, one of the big drivers for success, I put it to you, is the difference between the context of this parable and the context today. Today it might be, teacher, intervene with the fact that I didn't get that job when I really should have got it. Intervene with the fact that my CV was better than her CV and yet she got promoted ahead of me. You see, that would be the type of issue, because success is about a need for purpose and an increasing focus on the individual. Susan Orlean is a journalist in The New Yorker and an author who spent many, many years writing books and observing people searching for success, and this is what she has written. Like everyone else, I too had set out to be remembered in this city. I'd wanted to create something permanent in my life, some proof that everything in its way mattered, that working hard mattered, that feeling things mattered, that even sadness and loss mattered, because it was all part of something that would live on. Do you see? She's contextualizing all of her endeavors and achievements with something that might live on, something that would give her this sense of purpose. And so many people in this city are doing exactly the same, aren't they? So that's why we're searching for success, because we need purpose and we locate it in individual achievement. That's what we're looking for. But what's wrong with our search for success? Well, Jesus' whole parable is about deconstructing the problem if we try to look for success in the wrong area. So he's not saying a desire for purpose or maybe a desire for success is wrong. He's saying what is wrong is if you look for it in the wrong places or in the wrong things. And the key for that is in verse 15. Look at what he says. He says, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. Someone has said that being famous and experiencing that kind of success is a bit like watching someone ride past you really fast on a horse. You look at it, and when you observe it, you think, that looks really exciting, and I think I'd quite enjoy that. But the actual experience is frightening and a pain in the rear. Well, the testimony of many people who get success is the same. We look from the outside in and we say, that looks great. But Jesus says, verse 15, watch out. Now, the thing that you say watch out about is a hidden danger. If you're walking down the street and there's a hole that the person you're walking with hasn't seen, you say, watch out, there's a hole in the street, right? Because they haven't seen it. You don't say watch out when someone sees something. So Jesus is saying that the danger here about success, the trappings of success are hidden. Most people don't notice them. And he tells the parable to warn them. And what does he say we need to watch out about? Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Now, we think of greed purely in materialistic terms or maybe in food terms, but greed here, the word means an excessive desire for something. So Jesus is saying, watch out, be on your guard against an excessive desire for things that you will think that is where purpose lies. How does that work? Well, it's a little bit like this. Desiring a career is fine. It's a good gift from God. It's a natural thing to want to do your job and do it well and to progress in that. But if you have an excessive desire for it, if it starts to become the thing that defines you, Jesus says, watch out, be on your guard. Or, for example, material possessions. They're fine, they're good things. It's not wrong to want a roof over your head and clothes to wear and food to eat. But Jesus would say that if you have an excessive desire for them, if you say that if I get those, then I'll feel secure. If I get those, then I'll feel like I've achieved something and I've got a sense of purpose. He says, watch out, be on your guard. And it could be the same in any area. Wherever you locate success, if you say, if I get that, if I have that friendship network, if I get that promotion, if I manage to attain partner by this stage, then I will ... feel worthwhile, valued, enough. Jesus would say, watch out, you're falling into a trap. You're walking on the road and there's a hole and you're about to fall in. I quoted Mary Bell in that book at the beginning. Here's the extended quote. Achievement is the alcohol of our time, she says. These days, the best people don't abuse alcohol, they abuse their lives. You're successful, so good things happen. You complete a project and you feel dynamite. That feeling doesn't last forever, and you slide back to normal. You think, I've got to start a new project, which is still normal, but you love the feeling it gives you, that feeling of euphoria, and so you have to have it again. The problem is you can't stay on that high. Eventually in this cycle, you drop to the pain level more and more often. The highs don't seem so high. You may win a deal that's even bigger than the one that got away, but somehow the deal doesn't take you back to the high. An achievement addict is no different from any other kind of addict. See, she's saying we can become addicted to our search for success and our sense of achievement. And what's really fascinating is when Jesus tells the parable in verse 16, he uses the word euphoria. Look at verse 16. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest, literally in the Greek, a euphoric harvest, a euphoria situation. Now, of course, today we wouldn't get euphoric about having a great big harvest, but in an agrarian, traditional culture, you would do. But this would be like, nailing it in that partners meeting, pitching the big project which then you land, or going for the big architectural project which your firm then lands. And then you feel that moment. In that moment, we celebrating with your colleagues afterwards, you feel euphoric. And so this man is doing really well. He's got a great harvest. The money's coming in. He feels euphoric. And Jesus says, that's why we go after success. We want that euphoric feeling. And he says, watch out. Why do we need to watch out? Well, because he says, verse 15, life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. In other words, you won't find life in constantly seeking after euphoric highs in your career, in relationships, in performance, in anything. You won't find life there. And you know this if you pause and reflect on it for a moment. There are so many books and stories and films written about this issue that warn us of the person who sells out everything to get that thing that they think will give them euphoria, and they lose everything on the way. And when they get there, they realize the terrible tragedy and irony, life is not found there. Talking to a guy who used to come to one of the churches that Mark and I ran at Inspire a number of years ago, and he had attained partner very early on. And when I was talking to him about it, I was, going through some things in his life, and he was sharing me some of the difficulties he was experiencing in life. And he said, Pete, he said, I decided I wanted to become a partner in a consultancy firm when I was still 2 years away from graduating from school. That's what I decided I wanted to do. He said, every part of my focus from that time onwards, university, early career, has all been about this. He said, I got partner 3 years ago, one of the youngest guys in the firm to get partner. I said, how was it for you? He said, best and worst day of my life. I said, go on, unpack that for me. He said, best day because I got the thing I've been working at for 10 years. Worst day because I realized it wasn't enough. That's it, isn't it? Best and worst day. You get the thing you're going for and you realize euphoria is not found there. Life's not found there. It's the testimony of everyone who achieves some big goal they're going for. The sports star who goes for it and finally gets selected in the team, and then they win the match, and after they win the match, they realize the bottom line is you've got to do it again because people will say it was a one-off. And so the pressure's on straight away. You lose next week, the crowd's on your back. The performance artist who does a wonderful concert and then suddenly hears that someone else is actually better than them and they may not be doing that concert next week. The pressure's on straight away. In your career, you get the promotion and people say, fine, you've done that, but go for the next one. It's like walking in the hills. When you're walking in the hills and you think you've got to the mountaintop and you realize there's another one to go. And you just can never quite get to the mountaintop. Euphoria is not found there. And Jesus is saying this plainly, and we know it if we reflect on it. But we don't live that way. We keep telling ourselves, if I just get there, then I'll find it. We become addicted to it. Life's not found there. Secondly, as Jesus goes on in the parable, notice what happens. Look at the man in verse 18. This is what I'll do, he says. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, probably because the existing ones aren't giving him euphoria, by the way. And there I'll store up my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. So here he is. He's got the spreadsheet mapped out. He knows how much money he needs to send his children to the best schools. He's got his retirement plan. He's going to retire early at 50. He's got it all. He looks like a resounding success to the world. And verse 20, God said to him, you fool. This very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? Two problems with searching for success in the wrong place. First of all, life is not found there. Secondly, it doesn't take into account death. It's a lovely sunny day. I don't want to change the mood particularly, but I do think we need to have a moment of honest reflection. Can I share with you a kind of insider's secret as a vicar when you take funerals? You know what the funeral directors say to you at the end of the funeral? See you next time. It could be worse, right? They could say, see you soon. They say, see you next time. It always gets me that. See you next time, because for them, they just see it. It's just a conveyor belt. Friends, we spend so much in Western society not wanting to think about it, but Jesus would say, does your philosophy of life take into account death? And if not, what are you doing? This man has not taken into account death. And that question, I wonder how he would have answered that question. Who will get what you have prepared for yourself? Because the man has made it all about himself. Look at the emphasis on it. In verse 18, this is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build big ones. There I will store my surplus. I'll say to myself, you've plenty of grain laid up for many years. So it's all I, me, I, me. It sounds very cultural, doesn't it, with our individualistic age? We want success. We say it's all about me. We give a little bit of money to charity just to cleanse our consciences, but it's still mostly about me. And Jesus would say, you fool. Have you factored in death? You won't find life there in that pursuit, but you haven't taken into account death. So as we come to a close, what's the alternative? Well, it's quite tantalizing, but there it is in verse 21. This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but not gives lots away to lots of other people, which you might think, but then very strikingly, is not rich towards God. In other words, Jesus says, if you want to have something that gives you real life, and if you want to have something that takes into account death, if you want to experience real purpose and a sense of belonging and meaning and joy, be rich towards God. Now, what does that mean? Well, what it means is that the thing we are ultimately looking for is actually something we often search for in the wrong places. We're searching for God and we don't realize it. The euphoria we long for is something that we can only get in a relationship with God. I mean, after all, do you not think that the God who's created your career, or the God who creates the good gifts of music or sport, is infinitely more worthy of joy and satisfaction in him than the things themselves? Is not the creator better than the created thing? And here's the paradox. We go after the created things and missing the one who gives them to us. C.S. Lewis thought long and hard about this and wrote about it extensively. Here's a little quote from him. The books or the music in which we thought beauty was located will betray us if we trust in them. It was not in them, it only came through them, and what came through them was longing. These things are good images of what we really desire, but they're mistaken for the thing itself. If they're mistaken for the thing itself, they turn into dumb idols and break the hearts of their worshippers, for they are not the thing itself. They are only the scent of a flower we have not found, the echo of a tune we have not heard, news from a country we have never visited. In other words, he's saying euphoria is not found in the things we are searching for our success in, but they're found in a relationship with God. And so be rich towards God, because to the extent you are rich towards God, to that extent, you'll find life there and you'll find an answer to the problem of death there. And that's why Jesus Christ is the one who's telling us this parable, because he shows us a very different way. I mean, after all, here is the man who is arguably the most successful person of all time, and at the same time, the biggest failure of all time. No formal education, lived to the age of 33, and yet exerted an influence both in his life and after his life that was more profound, more impacting on the world than any other person. More people follow him today than any other ideology, person, or religion. And yet here is a person who throughout his life did not seem to be driving after success, because by the end of his life, all his closest friends had deserted him and he was dying a criminal's death, being put to death on a cross, rejected by everyone. So his life on one level, if you look at it macro, big picture, looks like a profound success, and on another level, as you look at it, looks like something worthy of scorn and a profound failure. And the thing about Jesus is, no matter whether people cheered him or jeered him, whether the crowds flocked to him or called out for him to be crucified, he was never defined by it. He had a security about himself. Why is that? Because he was rich towards his Father in heaven. He knew his sense of purpose in a relationship with his Father in heaven, and therefore he could deal with whatever the world threw at him, success or failure. He had that anchor. Not only does he show us a different way, but he also shows us the way back to satisfaction in God. Because Jesus' life, as successful as it could look, was all about his death. Because as he went to the cross, he gave it all up. He gave up the success, becoming a cosmic failure. That's what it looked like on the cross, so that you and I can be forgiven before God for the ways in which we try to locate our sense of identity in a search for success. He was rejected by God, so we can be accepted by God. He experienced cosmic pain on the cross, so we can have cosmic euphoria in a relationship with God, starting now and going on forever in eternity. He was the cosmic failure, so that we, as considered children of God by faith in him, can be considered the cosmic success. All of his line was done away with, so that we can endure in him forever. That's the great exchange at the cross. And so he says, will you be rich towards God? Will you therefore realize what I've done for you? And will you find success in a relationship with me and with my Father in heaven? And this makes all the difference. To the person addicted to achievement, it says you won't find life there and you won't be able to cope with death there. But come to me and I'll give you life and I'll walk you through death. To the person longing for adulation, he was scorned and rejected so that you can deal with the crowd and have a centered sense of purpose and meaning, irrespective of what people think of you. To the person yearning for recognition by their peers or their spouse, he says, I recognize you as a child of God because I've been rejected so you can be accepted. So now you have that anchor for your soul and you can be secure. And here's the difference that makes. As you grasp that, it changes everything. Let me close by telling you a little bit about a man called C.T. Studd. He was a Cambridge student. He went up to Cambridge as an undergraduate. In 1880, he captained Eton at cricket, captained Cambridge at cricket, and then went on to play for England in the first ever Ashes cricket match. Yes, we lost. But he was known as a success. He was one of the most successful people and famous people of his day. And he gave it all up to become a missionary to China. And as he did so, because so many people kept asking him why he would throw away his life, he wrote a poem. It was called Only One Life, and I'll read the last 3 verses of it to you. Give me, Father, a purpose deep, in joy or sorrow, thy words to keep, faithful and true, whatever the strife, pleasing you in my daily life. Only one life will soon be past, only what's done for Christ will last. Let my love with fervour burn, and from the world now let me turn, living for you and you alone, bringing you pleasure on your throne. Only one life, 'twill soon be past, only what's done for Christ will last. Only one life, yes, only one. Now let me say, your will be done. And when at last I'll hear the call, I know I'll say, it was worth it all. Only one life will soon be past, only what's done for Christ will last. Thanks for listening. Let me hand back over to Mark.